Welcome to Florida is Our Domain.
Hey there, and welcome to Florida is Our Domain with Anthony Policastro. Anthony is a Florida eminent domain attorney and founder of Policastro Law Group. With over 30 years of experience in the field, he represents national corporations, business owners, and individual landowners across the state. My name is Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're going to learn all about Tony, and we're going to talk about what eminent domain really is and how that process works in Florida. Anthony, it's so good to have you on. Thanks for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited because this is an area of law I don't really know a lot about. So I'm going to be learning along with the audience, and I'm excited about that. So before we do that, though, let's start a little bit about talking about your background. What first led you into this specific area of law, this eminent domain law? And, when did you decide to start your own private practice?
All right. Thank you, Kevin. I actually moved down to Florida from New Jersey, where I grew up, and I moved down in 1992, and I began working as an assistant county attorney at Pasco County in Florida, which is located in Newport Richey, Florida. And I was at the county for 3 years, and during that time, I worked on eminent domain cases, among other cases. And I just found myself interested in eminent domain because it gave me a real opportunity to do what I wanted to do, which is litigate cases. And I litigated on behalf of the county. And I had a few different trials, jury trials with the county that were successful. And I liked it so much that I decided to join the Department of Transportation for a couple of years after that, because I could just focus strictly on eminent domain and hone my skills on that. And then I went out in private practice in 1997, and I have been in private practice since. I actually formed the Policastro Law Group in 2011.
All right, awesome. Well, that's a good story. What would you like people to know about Policastro Law Group? What is it what makes you guys tick?
I think what kind of separates us and what my goal is that we created a law firm, which we have, that is very boutique in nature. We don't do any other practice but eminent domain law. We also are very client driven, which means that we make sure that we're very hands-on. Everybody here, treats the client when they first approach us, and give them specialized attention. We make sure that we're always there for them. For instance, I always attend all of the site inspections that the government conducts. Not all attorneys do that. I do. We also make sure that we pick the best experts that we possibly can to work on their cases. We're very reactive when clients call us. We always go ahead and make sure that either I answer them immediately, or if I can't, I have someone from my staff call them and set up an appointment for them to talk to me if I'm busy with court work at that time.
Yeah, that's great. Client first.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Side note, do you miss those New Jersey winters, Tony?
No, but right now I do sort of miss a New Jersey summer. It would be slightly cooler than this, and I do miss the fall.
Yeah, fall is great, especially on the East Coast. It's awesome. Well, you've worked on both sides of this process, including for government agencies, as you said. How does that shape the way that you approach private property cases today?
I think how it has shaped me is to make sure that, again, you're putting the individual client and their needs first. We take a look at the property as always being unique. We don't take a cookie cutter approach. And unfortunately, for a variety of reasons on the government side, they do take the cookie cutter approach, mostly because they go ahead and they hire an expert, such as an appraiser, who is often the lowest bidder or one of the lowest bidders on the project. So if he has a project with 50 different parcels to appraise and he's made a low bid, he's got impetus to quickly go through and appraise those properties using the same comparable sales over and over again, and not taking a look at the special nuances that each property has.
Ah, the good old government RFP process.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So let's get into it then. What exactly is eminent domain, and what gives the government the right to take private property?
It is the power of the government to condemn private property in accordance with the U.S. Constitution, the Fifth Amendment, and also the Florida Constitution and Florida statutes, Chapter 73 and 74, gives them that rights. If they want to condemn property, though, you have to always do it for a public purpose, not a private one. And they have to make a good faith estimate of value in their appraisal report. It's not necessarily the correct value of the property, but it's essentially um, them taking a stab at what they think the property is worth.
Okay. Okay. And how do the property owners usually find out about an upcoming project? Do they receive like a formal notice?
Yes, the project starts for the property owner when they receive a formal notice to owner, and that notice will articulate for them their rights, and that would be the beginning of the process. Then shortly thereafter, probably within about a month, a appraiser hired by the condemning authority will send them a letter saying that they're going to be on their property on a particular date and time, and they want to inspect the property. Often they want to get inside your home, if it's your house, or in your business, inside your building, even if they're just doing a partial taking and they're not condemning the entire property.
Okay. And what rules or guidelines does the Florida government have to follow when they decide to use eminent domain?
Um, to reiterate, they have to show that they have public necessity for the project, such as a road widening to alleviate traffic, future plans that they may have based again on traffic counts and growth in the area. They may also, condemn property for water needs or power needs, or even companies such as gas companies have the right to condemn property, and so they could put gas lines through your property.
Okay. So who typically calls you? What is the person who is like, I need to talk to Tony? Who is that client?
That client is somebody that has either found out through a public meeting that a taking is going to occur. They have found out through advertisement, frankly, from my law firm. They have found out that they've been approached by a condemning authority, that they've received that letter, that notice to owner, and they know the project's going to begin, and they're concerned about what's happening to their property, and they're really very unsure. Most people are very unsure about their rights, and
Hmm.
they're very unsure about how much property is being taken from them and what the result of all that will be.
Okay. And do you have a good story for us about a time when you may have successfully stopped a condemning authority from taking property from a private owner?
Yes. Several years ago, I worked on a case where a gas pipeline was going through, and this was in Pasco County, and they were going to put an above ground appurtenance, let's call it, or a switching station on this gentleman's vacant land. However, he had plans to develop a subdivision, which were ongoing. And he met with the gas folks and just asked them to move the switching station, the above ground appurtenance, away from where he had put his driveway cuts to the entrance of his subdivision, and suggested a place they could put it. They said they would consider it, but they never did. And then they filed a lawsuit. And then he called me up to say, hey, I don't want them to put this very ugly above ground machinery piping right next to where I want to put this really nice subdivision.
Hmm.
So we fought the taking of his property. And long story short, the gas station hadn't considered all the necessary alternatives of where to put that switching station, in order to successfully condemn property in Florida, you have to show that you've looked at various alternatives of where you want to put your road, where you want to put any sort of improvement that you want to do. And in this case, what the gas company was doing is they had just plopped it down on this particular spot without giving any consideration. Maybe because they thought it was just vacant land, they didn't quite understand. But even after they were educated by the property owner, they still ignored the property owner. They went forward. The judge stopped the taking. It was a hearing that took a couple of days. Both sides put on expert witnesses, and we proved to the judge that they hadn't done all the work necessary to condemn the property by looking at all those various alternatives. So the judge stopped the property. And what wound up happening is the gas station wound up engaging in negotiations, moving it to exactly where the property owner wanted it to begin with. And then, of course, paying him significantly more money than they initially offered.
Why do you think that's an interesting story? Because why wouldn't they like look at other options after that? Is it just because they like, well, we got our plans already put together, I don't feel like changing anything, or what? Why wouldn't they?
Well, it was that, and they really didn't have to move the appurtenance, if you want, or the switching station very far on his property. He just wanted to move it to a spot where he could nicely landscape around it.
Sure, yeah.
And not have it look like an eyesore at the beginning of a subdivision. So unfortunately, what happens in a lot of these cases is engineers just draw lines on paper, right? They don't take into account what they're going into, what they're hitting, what's around there, what are the particular property owners, needs, wants, desires. Even if he's willing to cooperate, they often would like to have some input in the process. And unfortunately, they don't always have that input.
Yeah, that seems so short-sighted to me. I mean, here you've got a guy who's really trying to work with you. They're not, they could easily be like, I don't want this, and they could fight it really hard, but he was trying to come up with solutions and they still fought him on it. That's crazy to me.
Correct. That is pretty crazy, but I guess a lesson learned for them.
Well, hopefully. I'd like to think so, right?
Yes.
So what types of entities can utilize eminent domain?
As I said, there are gas companies that can use it, utility companies, water management can do it. In Florida, obviously, the state of Florida has the power to condemn through the Department of Transportation, also local counties and cities as well.
Okay. And when it comes to legal and expert fees, how does that work? Do they get covered by the, assuming you win, do they get covered by the entity?
Well, the great thing about Florida, and we're a very rare state, because we're a full compensation state, meaning the property owner, per our Constitution, has to be fully compensated when a taking occurs. In many states, it's just or fair compensation. And what that means is they're not entitled to attorney's fees or expert costs at the end of the case. And you don't necessarily have to, quote unquote, win to hire an attorney in Florida and have those costs covered. As soon as, well, even before, eminent domain is coming to you and going to affect you. You have the right to hire your own attorney and your right to hire your own experts. And when I say experts, I mean an appraiser, an engineer, a land planner, an accountant if business is involved. Those sort of experts that can help you build your case and combat your case. And the theory behind it is this: if the government is armed with their own attorneys and their own experts, allowing the property owner to hire their own attorneys and experts to be paid for at the end of the case by the condemning authority puts them essentially on equal footing. So that is really the idea behind the law in Florida, which is a great law. I mean, if we were in any other state, practically that law doesn't exist. That law certainly doesn't exist in New Jersey or Georgia or Virginia or Texas, to just name a few.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's such an interesting niche of law. It's got to feel pretty awesome when you can help someone like you did that man who was kind of getting a little bit I don't know what the right word is, but pushed around a little bit almost by the
Right.
gas company.
Right. Having his opinion just really discounted of what he wanted to do when he wanted to work with them. So I agree with you on that. And yes, it is. It's a great law for property owners, and it's fair because if you think about it, this is a forced sale of property, right? It isn't like this is a willing seller with a willing buyer. So it's actually, a not willing necessarily seller who's being, forced to, sell his property essentially, or have his property taken by the government. Even though ultimately, I mean, we all understand, and the clients usually understand, it's for a good public purpose.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's an important thing to say. It's not just people just trying to grab some of your land. They actually have a reason for it, but you got to work with the owner too, property owner.
Correct.
Yeah.
And compensate them fairly for what you're
compensate them
and taking everything into account.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, well, what's the value of that land being taken? It's also, in many cases, what is that property after the taking occurs worth? Because let's just say you have a business property or a shopping mall, and they're taking, a significant amount of parking spaces from you with the taking. Well, you should be entitled to what's called severance damages in the law, which is damages to the remainder property, because your property is not worth the same as it is after the taking. Therefore, you have some damages. For instance, a very simple example, say someone owns a piece of property and it's worth $1 million, and the government comes by and they take $50,000 worth of land and improvements. After the taking has occurred, the property should be worth $950,000, right? $50,000 off of $1 million. However, if the property is only worth $750,000, then they're entitled to an additional $200,000 in damages to the remainder property, which we artfully call severance damages.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's just because the property value went down based on whatever was put on the property? Is that kind of why that happens?
And what was taken from the property, right?
Okay.
And also what was put on the property, you're correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting stuff for sure. Well, I'm excited to continue talking to you about this in future episodes. For people listening, just to kind of wrap us up here, what kind of conversation do you have with somebody right off the bat? So if someone might want to sit down and talk to you, what should they prepare to be asked? What should they be prepared with as far as documentation? What kind of stuff do you look for?
Well, we certainly always look for surveys from the property owner. So we have a good indication of what it is they own. We want to find out, of course, if there's mortgages on the property. We want to find out if there's leases in place on the property. We want to find out if anybody has an easement over their property. And generally, we want to know what's going on, if a business is being conducted on the property, what type of business that is. If it is a business that's owned by the property owner as well, that's important. And eventually, we would want to have all their financial records as well if they're eligible to make a business damage claim. And in Florida, you have to be in business for 5 consecutive years. And the business has got to be of the same nature for all 5 years to make a business damage claim. So those are some of the things that you need.
Interesting. All right. Well, thanks for that, Tony. And thank you for listening to today's episode of Florida is Our Domain. If your property is being taken or you think it might be, visit www.policastrolaw.com to learn more about your rights and schedule a consultation with Anthony. And if you found this episode helpful, be sure to leave us a review, subscribe to our channel. We got lots of great information coming your way in the future. Anthony, so good to learn more about you and what you do. Looking forward to chatting with you further.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.